Um, Hello. Okay. Hi, everyone. Right, just getting the technical pieces done there. Welcome to the webinar. Delighted that you've joined us. And a special hello and thank you to Justin, Joe, and Inda for agreeing to take us through some of their thoughts on reasons hotels need to change their approach to distribution and 3 kind of areas in which they can do just that. So a quick intro to me. I'm Charlie. I'm the Chief Tees at TripTees. And I'm focused every day on helping hotels drive direct bookings. And I think I'll go around the room, as it were. It looks a bit funny when I look sideways. They're not actually in the room with me. And ask each of you to introduce yourselves. Inda, would you like to go first? Justin first, great.
Yeah, Justin, okay. Justin Horner here. I'm a senior product manager over at Sands in Las Vegas. We have about 8,000 rooms in our property. My primary focus is I build booking engines. So I focus specifically on direct channels and driving, making it as easy as possible for our revenue management team to help drive whatever segment that we're trying to get into our direct channel at the time based on need dates and other things. So that's my primary focus, is making it as easy as possible to use our direct channel.
Great, thank you. Joe?
Hi, and I'm Joe Pettigrew from Starwood Capital Group. So I look after what we call an integrated revenue strategy across all of our properties that we own in Europe and in Asia. And so my remit is really just about maximizing the revenue from the assets that we own.
Great, thank you.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. Inder Banga, Vice President of Channel and Distribution Strategy at Wyndham Hotels and Resorts. So we've about 9,200 hotels in over 80 countries, oversee all of internal strategy regarding channels and then distribution with our OTA and meta search partners.
Great,
and wholesale,
thank you.
Wholesale as well.
And I should say that one of the reasons why we've pulled together Justin, Joe, and Inda today is because they are part of our new Hotel Heroes program at TripTees. One of the things we've sort of noticed over the last few years of running webinars and having our blog being active and also the direct booking seminar is that there are amazing experts out there involved in other hotels than yours right now who want to share their experience and their best practices because they believe in seeing the whole market get better. And so to highlight this, we've picked out some of the best speakers and most informative people we think in the market and asked them to join our Hotel Heroes campaign so that we can get them to encourage them and give them a platform to share more of their wisdom. So thank you very much to you 3 today for joining us, members of the Hotel Heroes program, and we should get on with some sharing. So I think that will make sense. So the format today, I've asked each of the speakers to just go through something that's a bit of a hobby horse of theirs, something they think hotels need to do more of, something they're trying to do in their everyday that's having success, and just talk a little bit about why that is and what works about it. And so we're going to start with Justin.
Yeah, so one of the things that I've been focusing on a lot over the last year especially is that the premise that the brand that you're most interested in is the one that Google tells you about first. And it's the idea that more and more users are going to be interacting with and discovering brands and opportunities through Google, and that's just continuing to spiral and get bigger and bigger. So a lot of the interface design that I've been working on lately has been, how do I get people from Google into our direct channel as efficiently as possible, and then mirror within our brand the user experience as closely as possible. So users are used to specific user interface components, checkboxes, inform inputs, calendar concepts that are very similar whether they are in an Android or an iOS device. So I've been spending a lot of time building our booking engine to mirror a lot of those interface components so that the user experience flows from Google to our brand as efficiently as possible. So that's been a really cool set of experiments we've been running lately, and making that as simple and as possible for guests. The other one is a lot of tests around how can I reduce the friction in the direct channel So for example, I'm building a new booking engine right now, where our current booking engine flow takes about 6 clicks and 3 form inputs before they can get to the checkout page. And that's pretty average. Went and studied about 30 different booking engines, and we're right in the range. Some take more, some take less. And our new booking engine that we're coming out with reduces that friction from 1 click from our website and then 1 more click to our checkout page. And so the premise there is to create compression on the checkout page. That way we can focus our conversion rate optimization around a single page, not trying to spend a lot of time on 6 or 5 or 4 different pages, and make that checkout page as efficient as possible. And that's where we can do a lot of personalization testing and things like that. So those are my 2 big things that I am focusing on right now, and having a lot of fun with a lot of different A/B tests to experiment.
Cool, and that's the first time I've ever heard of going, as it were, a Google first design. Is that something that you've seen some other retailers or anyone else do, or you were from first principles, you thought we want this to feel intuitive, and Google is the one thing that everybody gets?
Well, the data shows that more and more guests are coming directly from Google. Our organic traffic is continuing to go through the roof, and those guests are some of our most lucrative in terms of conversion rate optimization, and our costs for search engine optimization. And those guests, it's a very lucrative channel for us from a return on investment or a return on ad spend. So we tend to focus on that group. Again, we are fairly compressed when it comes to Las Vegas. So that works great for us, but it may not work great for everybody else. But yeah, the Google first concept came from my retail background. So Charlie and you, Joe and Inder know this, but I came from the Walmart world and doing a lot of retail. Worked with a number of retailers, from sports to clothing, food, all of it. And a Google first concept, that premise that Google, the brand that you're the most interested in is the one that Google presents you to, is a key one for helping focus a lot of your efforts around how do we get our brand in front of users on Google and drive those users into our funnel.
And if someone listening wanted to kind of see that brought to life, is there something they can go and see on your website now, and they'll be able to identify this? Oh yeah, that does feel a little like Google. Are there things that are live, or that's something that you're currently working on?
They are live, but they are behind some A/B tests right now. So hopefully here in the next few weeks, I can roll that out publicly and let everybody see exactly what we're doing and how. But right now, that's still behind the paywall. You can see some of it on our brand website, thevenetian.com, and some of the components. The visual language around that I'm talking about is called material design. You can go to material.io and see some concepts and how Google just makes all of their user experience research available for free for anybody to use and look at and explore and understand. So it's totally worth looking at just to understand general ideas. So if you wanted to see some material concepts, you can see that on our website now.
Great. And I know one of the things you mentioned before was that one of the reasons why you put emphasis on the direct channel and why you believe it's important is it allows you also to run tests you were just talking about there, to identify different audience segments and have a way of tests. Can you talk a bit about that?
Sure. Well, of course, I'm going to say direct is best, but I know that it's a very, it's not the only channel, and it's not the only channel for that's going to be a good fit for different brands. So for our brand, it's a great channel, and we see a lot of value in driving our guests through that funnel because we learn a lot more about them, and that translates very cleanly into their guest experience when they're on property. And that has a lot of other benefits beyond just a dollar amount that I could put on the value of sending somebody through our funnel. But a lot of our segments are very complex, and there's only so much you can do from a testing standpoint with other channels. If I had my revenue management team come to me and say, hey, we want to test this thing, the first thing I'm going to try to do is figure out an inexpensive and efficient way to do that on the direct channel. But if we can do that more effectively in another channel, I'm going to support them in doing that in whatever way we can. But my brain is going to tend to focus on how can we use the direct channel to test that segment, drive that segment to our funnel, and create a great experience for them. So, so yes, while for our brand, direct is a great tool for us to drive certain segments into it. But there are many segments that are just far more efficient to drive into other channels.
And can you give one last a little example, maybe of a test you were able to run that was sort of small and quick and dirty?
Yeah, we've got dozens running at any given time. Right now, one that we did recently that involved a lot of different operational impacts, so all of these tests tend to, is we removed the need for a billing address from our credit card form, which reduces friction in the funnel, and we saw a lift for mobile specifically. And that's something that we can do because it's a direct channel and I can control the checkout form as much as I want. Good luck trying to do that on Expedia and telling them what to put in their form. So that was an example of how we could very quickly test something, and we ended up finding that for desktop that was not that big of an impact, but for mobile devices, specifically certain types of devices, it had a huge impact. So then we were able to target those types of devices, and those types of devices did not have to fill out that information. So we saw a conversion lift of about 20% for that particular device set.
Wow. Okay. So targeted, segmented learnings, and then I guess personalizing the experience, so people get a different experience, and you running a test. Great.
Correct.
Okay, that's a great place to start. Thank you so much. That, yeah, Google one is a great insight I've not heard of before, and certainly we see, I mean, with the rise of Google Hotel Ads and the effort they're making to drive traffic to hotels now as a result, it feels like this is just going to be the dominant channel. It's just going to keep growing. Although please disagree with me, Joe and Inder, if you think. Okay, so and just before we move on to Joe, one of the I had here a slide because I knew you were going to talk a bit about targeting segments, and so this was just an example actually from sort of the back end of the Triptease system of picking different segments, which might be length of stay or when someone's going to check in, and then giving people different messages. One of the examples of that is like a nudge message that you no doubt have seen on OTAs and hotel websites now displaying. And what we find is one of the challenges we find here that I just thought I'd remark on when I knew you were going to talk a bit about testing is you're at a scale where testing makes great sense. I don't know how many conversions you get a month, but it's thousands of rooms, right? So you must be getting a whole load of people converting every month. And that's a lot. I wasn't going to press you for a number. Maybe you'd say, I'm not sure.
I can't, but you know, we're able to get to statistical significance usually within a week or two, depending on the test. Of course.
Yeah, we find that the average 100-room hotel gets to statistical significance on most personalization tests after 2 years, which basically means forget it. There's just no point because no experiment that runs for 2 years would make any sense. So, but anyway, one of the things we find is that by people taking segments and targeting different segments in different ways, that really has a big uplift in conversion. It's extraordinary how different different segments of consumers are, and how worthwhile it is giving them different offers and benefits and the like. So, okay, great. Thank you very much. That was a great way to start. So that was a real focus on one channel and optimizing the direct channel, which is something we talk and think a lot about. Joe, I want to switch over to you and talk a bit about how you think about channels and optimizing across them.
Yeah. I think so. Obviously, I think we are all sitting here worried about, our cost of sale and driving direct bookings. But one thing that, I'm really focused on is kind of prioritizing how we are utilizing the various different channels that we have at our disposal. So, focusing really hard on driving the overall performance of the hotel first. And kind of, getting, your performance up there, whether that is compared to your last year or your budget or on STR compared to your comp set. And once you're at a comfortable position where the hotel is performing well, then we start to worry about cost of sale. That's when we start to kind of optimize how do we then, get to the similar result or maybe even improve on that result but doing it on a direct channel. So too often I see way too many hoteliers, our own hotels, who are just too focused on the direct booking element of it, right? So they are religiously tracking direct booking share, but it's it's a metric that bugs me a lot because it's a vanity metric. It doesn't actually mean anything. It doesn't tell you anything about how well you're doing as a hotel, other than, yeah, great, we're driving a lot of bookings directly. Well, I can make that happen. I can make my direct booking share 100% if I wanted to, pretty easily, by shutting off everyone else. And so it's about kind of prioritizing, hey, how can we get our hotel to perform at its maximum, optimal level, and then worry about driving direct bookings. So, the way you do that is obviously just kind of taking advantage of all the distribution channels you have available, and then really studying how your customers are behaving on each of those channels. So I see that we have the slide on there, but that's just a great example of a hotel by various different room type and by channel, how customers are booking different, they have a higher propensity to book certain room types on different channels. So in this example here, you see Expedia guests have a much higher propensity to book the family rooms in this particular example. But you also see, kind of the website guests booking quite a lot on deluxe double and so on. And so what that shows you is a great insight of like what kind of demand could be available. So going back to that family room example, we actually have a hotel in London that was struggling to kind of get our fair share in the market, particularly during the week. It's an independent hotel, and an independent hotel really doesn't have, somebody like Justin, who is, constantly testing booking engine and creating new one. We have a off-the-shelf booking engine with no kind of a digital person to speak of, on-property revenue manager, and a GM, and so for that particular property, an OTA was a great insight. So for example, we've actually tested the market and see, hey, if we were able to allow for a maximum of 2 adults and 2 children to book at our hotels, what kind of demand exists out there? And so we've kind of opened that up because it wasn't as straightforward to make that happen on our direct channel because of the way that our booking engine was connected with our PMS, and it just it was only we could only do it by number of occupants, but not specifically divided into adults and children type thing. And so when we tested it on OTAs, we got huge amounts of volume, and because of that, we were able to raise our rates, and all of a sudden, we were able to kind of get our fair share pretty quickly, but actually start to exceed our GI target fairly soon, which allowed us to understand that, hey, there's a strong demand for families coming into our neighborhood. And number 2, it made a very strong case to make whatever upgrades that we needed to do so that we can allow our own channel to be able to accept those bookings, right? But it gave us a great kind of a testing platform to kind of understand the demand that exists out there. And number 2, have a real concrete plan to invest more capex into building out our systems. So that's just a obviously a small example, but there are lots of examples like that where we try to make sure that we are performing well on all channels, and then we direct our energy and effort into worrying about how do we then replace some of those bookings directly.
Okay, I love that. So after Justin's example of using the direct channel where you're in control to be able to run quick tests and learn stuff, your alternative strategy is actually you can use OTAs to run quick tests and learn. Sometimes that's an easier, better way of doing it, which is fascinating. I've never heard that one before. And I'm just interested though. So let's say I create a beautiful chart like this, download 2 years of PMS data, and I look at my different channels and try to understand what kind of bookings they're bringing me. Is it that I should look at something like Expedia, which is strong here in families, and I should be thinking, okay, that's great. Let me if I know that Expedia is strong in families, I should work even harder to get even more out of them? Or should I be looking at Expedia who aren't bringing me many junior suites and say there's an opportunity for them to perform better, and I should be changing what I do on Expedia to try and attract more suite bookers? How do you decide what to do with this?
I think it kind of goes both ways. So again, I try to kind of bucket them into two stages. So the stage number one is let's try and make sure that we are capturing that particular demand segment as well as we are currently doing it, and actually maximizing that. So if Expedia is bringing a lot of family rooms today, I want to make sure that I continue to get, or maybe even try to get more of that family room share on Expedia. So that is phase one. But phase two is then wonder, how can I get that business directly, right? So that's when I have to do a little bit of digging, another layer of analysis on who are these people, where are they coming from, what day of week are they booking, like what is the profile of these guests, and start to develop either a marketing plan or your content, just looking at everything you're doing to drive bookings directly to try and adapt to whatever Expedia is doing to capture that audience, that we should also start to go after the same thing. And often sometimes it can be a really simple, stupid thing, right? So one thing that I think everyone should do is put a little kind of a quick and easy and dirty survey widget on your booking engine. So somewhere on the booking engine, you want to ask maybe two questions. One is on the room rate selection page. You want to ask a very simple question that says, hey, is everything clear on this page? And your only options are yes or no. And if you hit no, then a little text box might pop up and actually ask you to kind of talk about more on it. And then the second question is on an actual payment page. You might want to put in another thing that says, what is preventing you from actually confirming your reservation today? And between these two things, you find amazing insight. So for something like family room, it might just be that you start to get some feedback on your booking engine that say, hey, I wasn't so clear about like your children's breakfast policy or something that your booking engine just doesn't talk about, but on Expedia, it makes it abundantly clear, right? So something as little as having that kind of policy statement, or just something that gives the customer that extra confidence about what they're booking, makes a huge difference. But you wouldn't know that family demand is all kind of coming from Expedia or any other channel had you not been looking at that. But I would say, again, going back to your question, Charlie, I would say, first of all, just keep on making sure you're getting that demand from Expedia while you figure out how you drive that back on your direct channel.
Got it. That's really great. So not only looking at, so first of all, you're in a similar way to what Justin was talking about. You're really trying to segment different people. There are different types of guests. They're buying in different ways. So make sure you think about each one individually, or each different segment individually. And then actually seeing it as a positive. If you've got a channel that's really strong and outperforming in one area, like that's a positive. There's something to learn from and maybe also optimize there. But also it provides an opportunity to understand, why is that doing so well in that segment? And is there something I can learn to bring those people direct? Got it. That's a wonderful overview of approaches. Okay, great, thank you. And I think I'm gonna move on to Inder, unless either of the other two of you fancy any questions, comments?
I don't want to pause too much here. I want to give Inder plenty of time to speak to these ideas as well. But another approach here would be like, well, which of these segments are driving ADR? I would want to know if Expedia is capturing a lot of low ADR guests, and I am naturally able to capture a lot of high ADR guests, there's a huge opportunity there on our property, at least, for recouping a number of, a significant portion of the fees that we would pay out to an OTA. So it might be a really cool test to run in this case. Looking at this data here, I would expect that the family is probably a lower ADR for us, at least. But these deluxe suites are going to be high ADR. What can we do to capture more on direct booking, improve the experience for those guests, drive their ADR to be higher, maybe through add-ons and other tweaks. So that was my first impression of this. Is there's great things happening here with these different channels. Let's optimize them.
Yeah, so I guess you could run this, or maybe you do, Joe, run this analysis also where the x-axis is different length of stay or different ADR values or different lead time. I guess you could use a number of different ways of splitting it. Or is this do you find it most useful when you do this analysis to run it by room types, or do you also look at others?
No, so the real key, I think, thing on this slide is a room type is just one example, but you always want to run an analysis on a minimum of 2 dimensions. And so basically, we do an amazing job of going, well, what's our room type share, or what's our booking share by channel? Like everybody sees that. What's our ADR by channel? Well, everybody knows what that is. But we don't ask ourselves the question, at least not enough, in my opinion, of what is the ADR by channel and by length of stay or by booking window, or it's just adding one more dimension and it's just another layer, one more layer deeper into that analysis. But we don't do it enough, and part of the reason is because our PMSs don't do a very good job of multidimensional reporting. I mean, it is so incredibly. I mean, it's just hard, and I don't know what makes it so hard, but like you can't pull a report with 2 dimensions quite often. Unlike you can on Google Analytics, right? You can add as many, or I think 4 or 5 dimensions. It's just hard to do on a PMS.
Okay, so top tip to everybody is, if you don't know how to use a pivot table in Excel, export your PMS data for 2 years. Maybe 2 years might be too much data, for 3 months, and then go look up pivot tables, which only take you 5 minutes to learn, and they help you combine many different factors like this.
Yes.
Okay, great, cool, thank you very much. So Inder, over to you. Thoughts on what it is that hotels need to change, or how they need to think differently about driving bookings at the moment?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Some great insights so far from Justin and Joe. Tough act to follow, but I'll try my best. Going on what Joe just mentioned in terms of understanding each of the channels, right? What we started to do, and I think thinking about fair share, I think the industry has kind of gotten into a rhythm of looking at, our star reports on a week-to-week and a monthly basis, and just kind of thinking that that's like anything and everything, right? And it's a great indicator on the health of the property overall, but really to get to where everybody is going now, and I've had multiple conversations with some of my colleagues at Marriott and IG and Hilton, and it's really the profitability. And I think if you're looking at a star index, there's so many different products or journeys out there now, and specifically if I call out, a hotel in your comp set could be doing all booking.com business, which is a commissionable product, right? So you're going to be seeing your full sell ADR coming through there, but you have no idea that the hotel has a significant cost on the back end, even though their RevPAR index could be highly influenced, because of that higher ADR. So looking at just a star report, I think is something that you can look at it to kind of give the overall health of the product or the property, but really driving it down. And this is kind of what we're starting to look at Wyndham is looking at it from a channel perspective. So Joe made a great comment. We look at the channel and we say this is the ADR of the channel, but you need to break out the segment or the customer journey within that channel, right? Because there could be so many different customer journeys that could be taking place on, what we just mentioned here. Families book a ton on Expedia, and if you're drilling down on just that one area, that family could be multiple different journeys. It could be, a DINK, dual income, no kids. That's a family, right? Or it could be a family of 2 kids and 2 adults, right? So I would assume that that's probably what we're identifying family here in this case. But just kind of and what is the next step from that? Each of those individual journeys from a gross operating profit perspective, they could be booking stuff on property, right? So bringing it all back, the way that we're starting to look at it and how I think hotels is really getting into each and individual channel and then segment within, look at just the, the top 80% of what's booking. I mean, if you look at the 20% that gives you 80% in that channel, you can really get very specific very quickly in terms of what is actually driving that channel behavior. So something else that we've also started to look at is even the different channels and the different segments. So if you call third party, right, you have OTA, wholesale, GDS. You could actually start to test, does certain channels make sense for my business based on the costs, the cost perspective, right? So I'm not going to pick on, I don't want to pick on wholesale, but it's a very high cost sometimes, just based on the nature of the business. So you could have potentially 50 or 60% off, sell in terms of your static rate or what you've negotiated with the wholesaler, and that's a pretty high cost. If you were to eliminate it in certain areas or certain lead times, or just minimize the booking window or minimize the different room types, and only drive certain revenues through that channel or through that that segment within the third party, then you can actually optimize and maybe even drive that revenue, hopefully to direct, right? I mean, that's where we all would love to see it go to, but even through an OTA that you have better margins with potentially is far better. So I think that's how we're starting to take a look at the channels, and then as they in terms of distribution costs. I know cost of sale is something that's obviously super important to us, and I think again, in speaking with many of my different colleagues, there's a certain amount of direct business that you can get. I think a lot of the consumers now are just very just they're very I'm losing the word right now, accustomed to either booking a certain way or shopping a certain way. That's why all these people keep clicking around, even though Hilton's trying to educate them a little bit differently, right? And the rest of the industry, I think we've done a really great job of educating those people. But there's still going to be those people that are going to go to an OTA first, or go to Google, obviously, and then search from there. So I think it's really important to one, look at the different channels, either be very strategic in those different channels with the different partners that you have, and I don't think any one segment or distributor is kind of exempt from this. I mean, obviously the big two drive a ton of revenue to all of our hotels, Expedia and Booking, but even within there, I think there's definitely opportunity to, either limit the amount of availability, or especially when you have the times when the demand is definitely there.
And so, I mean, you started there mentioning star reports and star index. So is that a case of the metric that's being used throughout the business is driving, in a sense, the wrong behavior? That's the point. You think that the simplicity of that metric is actually not encouraging people enough to think about channel shift and driving different behaviors, different needs in different channels?
Yeah, I mean, if you take a look at and I'm not picking on them by any means. I think it's just the way that we have moved over. We've kind of evolved. Is it's very simplistic in nature. It doesn't allow you to drill down. I think there's several companies that are starting to kind of, or not starting, but have kind of been around. I know, TravelClick, shows a ton of different information, and again, by segments. It's really getting down to like the different information and how competitive are you in those various channels and in those various segments. So like the example that I mentioned, I mean, Expedia has Hotel Collect and Expedia Collect, but there's some properties that say I'm not going to be on Expedia Collect because it's net rate, right? And I'm only going to be on the Hotel Collect piece, and that's all sell rate. So if I don't know, as my competitors are only on sell rate for Booking and Expedia, then my ADR could be highly influenced from that perspective, even though I think I should be compared to those guys, and my ADR is probably 60% while they're at 100% ADR, and it's influencing the rest of the behavior. So I think it is a little bit more simplistic, and again, it gives a good health check. But I think as hotels and as the data continues to get refined and is available to us, to really taking advantage of that.
Okay, cool. And diving into one channel in particular, and I should add, this was data and some chart from a hotel group that I was helping in Europe, so not Wyndham data. But I'm looking at this. So here we are. Hopefully, Joe, this meets the test of grouping in a number of different. Well, maybe not quite. But I've done this by lead time, so you can see across the x-axis that these are the bookings that Tarico for this particular hotel brought in on different lead times. And I'm correct if I'm wrong, but that's quite healthy, right? You've got lots of bookings in a far out lead time. That's what you're hoping for and looking for.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to what are your distributors, or what are you expecting the behavior from that channel and that segment. So in this case, I think this is healthy behavior. I mean, you want your wholesale providers, I think in this case Tarico, to be booking further out in advance and probably longer length of stay. I'd probably add to Joe's point here, adding the second dimension of length of stay. So if I got 31 60 days out, if they're all one night length of stay, I'd probably be a little concerned. But if it was a little bit longer length of stay, I probably wouldn't mind it. Given whatever the discount is being provided here. Okay. But again, because our booking windows are so short now, it doesn't matter which property. I'm sure Justin can probably be like, I don't know how much of his business comes in, day of or a couple of days out. That's where you don't want to see a lot of the on-route distribution issues to be happening. But again, 31, 60 days out, depending on your booking window, your primary booking window, you don't want to impact that. So I would say this is fairly healthy.
Okay, cool. And then by contrast, another a different wholesaler for this particular hotel had a very different kind of chart in terms of the kind of bookings they were bringing at different times. And as you can see from this particular one with this particular hotel, they were getting a high proportion of their hotel beds bookings were low rate and lower rooms in sort of 1-2 weeks out. And for me, this was like a bit of a flag of, okay, on this specific channel, the hotel might do better at looking at closing out availability because they're not getting the best rates for these low lead time bookings. Is that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's important to recognize in this chart, and I appreciate you putting both these together. I mean, looking at it from a rate perspective, again, I think, echoing what Joe mentioned in terms of dimensions, typical booking window is now, I think it used to be 14 days. Now it's like, I think 60 or 70% comes within 3 days, depending on where you are. And then like 80% of the business comes within 7 days. Any low rate that comes in, especially given that's where the consumers are booking, the majority of, the rooms now, you need to be very cautious about those low rates because everywhere is becoming a marketplace, right? I mean, Google is obviously a marketplace, Ctrip's a marketplace, Fliggy's a marketplace. They're all marketplaces. Everybody wants to become a marketplace, and everybody's going to get the inventory wherever they're going to get the inventory from. So it's it's not only like focused so solely on Google. It's like, where else can these rates find themselves? And you're not only competing against your own rate, whether you're a partner of Ctrip, right, and you want to sell directly through Ctrip, they're going to take whoever they're going to take it from, as long as it makes the most sense financially for them. And sometimes a lot of hoteliers, may not know that, but essentially, the rate parity and where the inventory is sold is so important, and that's like the level of detail that hoteliers really need to get down to make sure that they're focused on their profitability overall.
Yeah, and this is something we've spoken about before, and I've definitely seen it across quite a few independent hotels and also groups that particularly those if you've got a lot of wholesale business and they're booking in that in the last 1 week beforehand, that's not really often why you take on a wholesaler. And if you've got consumers, guests, real people who are booking your hotel 2-3 days out, if the wholesaler wasn't bringing them, most likely those people are actually looking on the internet and they're going to find you via another OTA or on your own direct website. And so very often we found that hotels who have a parity problem with short lead time, so parity problem for this weekend, for next weekend, that actually closing out wholesalers who are selling high volumes in the short lead time actually is the quickest way to fix that parity problem. So definitely worth something. So I guess that's just me saying the same thing that Joe was before, right? Download that data from your PMS, look at it by channel, look at it in a number of different ways, and you'll uncover little insights that just help you decide better channel shift.
Yeah, and also if I could just kind of point out, this exact behavior is usually a symptom of, so like, I don't know who this hotel is, but if you were to kind of take the same exact data, but look at your cancellation rate by channel, by lead time, usually what happens is, you get a huge number of cancellations or watch typically a particular OTA that shall not be named on here. And then what happens is, the hotels freak out, and then they, just opening up and everything, and, to try and actually get that last minute bookings in. But, that's when the rate starts to, kind of reverse yield down, and it just all kinds of bad things happen. But if you knew what your cancellation rate was in different intervals of lead time, you can manage that so much farther away in advance, and actually solving that problem could also help you solve this problem that we're looking at. So it just goes back to kind of, understanding how each of your channels are behaving for you.
Yeah, okay, I'm going to pause the share there a little bit. Oh, I think that's going to pause there. Oh, stop sharing screen there for a moment. Great, so thank you, that was good, and I think we've got some questions coming through. While we wait for those, one that's on my mind at the moment, because I was at Hedna last week in, I forget which country I was in last week. Spain, Madrid. It was Madrid.
Madrid.
Oh, every week's another city. It was fabulous, an excellent Hedna. They just get better and better. It must have something to do with India being involved. But one of the key topics that was really just talked about a lot was attribute-based pricing, and that the future of hotel online sales is going to be, splitting apart the room into various attributes, and hell, maybe not even starting with the room as the core thing that people are buying. Is attribute-based pricing something that's in your minds at the moment? Is it something that you're, either working on, or you playing a wait and see? And
yeah, I mean, I'm happy to join in. That definitely something that we're looking into. I think tons of money to be made there. One, right? I think if you take a look at the airlines, and they're really the ones that are focused on attribute-based pricing. It's just a matter of time. I think the hospitality industry moves a little bit slower when it comes to technology advancements, and I think still we're behind farmers for some reason. But we're getting there. We're getting there. Looking at what the airlines have done in terms of creating different products, and then essentially being able to add on as a consumer. Consumers want to have that level of choice. It's just a matter of the complexity of hotels. How much complexity are they willing to kind of take on? But there's definitely value there, from upselling to personalization, the attribute, what's involved in that rate overall. There's definitely something there. So we're starting to explore it, but I think there's a lot of great conversation that's happening at Hedna. And the initial phases is going to be a lot of conversation, and then kind of like where we take that to the next level, and then we're hoping that especially you mentioned my involvement in Hedna, so to kind of like create best practices with the rest of our industry, and definitely we're a working group that is going to be solely dedicated to what that looks like and how we can create some of those best practices for any brand and any independent property.
Yeah. Justin, is upsells a key part of your revenue, ancillaries, add-ons? Do people buy that in the direct process much yet?
Moving towards that, a lot of my focus is where in the customer journey is the best place to present them with those opportunities, because you got to be careful with that sweet spot of presenting too much information and paralysis of choice in the direct funnel. But post-transaction, there are tons of opportunities in follow-up emails, the confirmation page, at front desk when they arrive. The more information we can gather about the guests, what they're trying to create, the better of a procured set of add-ons and upsells that we can present to the guests to drive that ancillary revenue. So it's not just about, again, which channel. In this case, it's direct. Yes, I do want to present them with add-on opportunities. I want to make sure that those guests, especially the high ADR guests, the ones that are looking at the upper scale, upper higher tier rooms, they're probably going to be more interested in curating their experience, while other guests earlier in the funnel, if we can tell that they're looking for the cheapest rate and in a short term, we probably don't want to give them paralysis of choice. So learning how to best modify and personalize the funnel to the guest and at what point we should be presenting them with add-ons is a lot of what we're testing right now.
And you actually train your front desk staff as well to say, oh, there's a suite upgrade available if you're interested?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in fact, it's interesting because we deal with, and I'm sure you'd see this in your organizations as well, front desk will often cancel out some of our sales that we made in the booking funnel so they can get their commission. So some of those data challenges and organizational issues I've run into where from an attribution standpoint, I can say, hey, I'm driving revenue here, except for this weird policy thing. It's just stuff that I'm learning about with this industry that you have to accommodate for. So.
Got it, cool. Okay, we have a question that's come in. Do you believe it is important to always outprice the OTAs with specials or promotions on your own website? And and how much does that affect parity scores with them and challenges? So do you always undercut the OTAs? Is that essential?
I mean, I wouldn't say it is. Yeah, I mean, I think the very first, and again, I personally go back to the idea of, don't try to give anybody an advantage or disadvantage. Just try to leverage what each of those channels give you so that you are performing at the maximum level that it can. And so it's not about restricting anybody from getting a certain rate or anything. It's just it's a fair game. Let everybody bring in what they're delivering and then figure out why that particular channel is better than your channel in giving you some of those bookings, and so do it in a way that it doesn't undercut your own rate. You want to be able to maximize your ADR. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I would definitely echo. I don't think it's necessarily that you need to be undercutting. I mean, I think there's opportunity to market, right, through either email or, I mean, you could have a special, I think there's been a lot of success with, certain packages that are available, and those could be, in parity or a couple of dollars more, and you will drive behavior if they are going to, the brand website, but by no means, and Charlie, you probably can echo this even more so because of all the tests that you guys have been doing and all the properties that are in EMEA, but all those rate parity clauses went out, and I think the latest stats is a lot of properties didn't really, there was no advantage really to be taken because there were certain certain impacts to their rankings or whatever the case is on Expedia or Booking or whoever they were undercutting at the time. So
yeah, we generally just try to make sure that people focus first of all on being in parity. Like that's the main challenge that most hotels have, is they are being undercut, and if only they could get a level playing field, and often that's a wholesaler rate leakage challenge. If you can maintain parity, you don't need to go undercutting OTAs. You be a fair player, and actually you can convert really well, because there's a sense of consumers wanting to book direct, right? We see that when the prices are the same, people do prefer to book direct usually. I mean, again, different segments. Yeah. And
I will say one thing though, and this is something that has kind of been coming up more often than not. And I mean, rate parity is obviously super important, but that we've seen certain distributors take either defensive positions or even get to a level of audience targeting that we typically have never even really considered. So I think we talk about rate parity very broadly, and there's very specific windows that these times when the technology companies, the technology and marketing companies, which I'm not going to name all of them, but have the ability that, some of our PM and our CRS systems just don't have the ability to turn on a rate, and then it's in a flash of a pan, and then have it cut, and that's available only for certain. So we have started seeing some of that behavior. So just wanted to caveat. I mean, I think there's still a lot more research to be done, but changing the price or having a different price for IP address, certain time of the day, between 5:30 and 6:30 or 11 and 11:30 when people are actively shopping, and there might not be a shopping tool that's like actively shopping at that time, right? So you're in parity 23 hours a day, and for that 1 hour when you see a huge rush of bookings, you're like, why do I keep on getting as many bookings during this time period? Definitely kind of take that with a grain of salt. So
yeah, I think and one of the reasons I guess we've always been relatively pro, parity is the first stop, is that I'm particularly here in Europe where Booking.com, reigns supreme. They've done that without undercutting, right? Generally, they've been pretty good about maintaining parity. Now, the shift to Booking Basic and the shift to becoming a merchant is a little bit of one to watch, because it feels like they're beginning to follow their Agoda model that's worked for them in Asia, which is quite the opposite, and has often been to undercut. So we watch it carefully, but at the moment, I think getting to parity is first. I've got another question come in, which is, has the direct booking movement been unhelpful in terms of distracting people from focusing on overall profitability? It sounded like, Joe, that's one of the things you agree with. Has direct booking movement been unhelpful?
I wouldn't say it has been unhelpful. I would actually say that overall it has been helpful, because to Inder's point, another sort of pet peeve of mine is when the revenue managers or anybody only look at the top line performance, right? And just going, what we're delivering and hitting all the revenue at the top line, which is great. But then they're actually forgetting about that second stage I'm talking about, which is, okay, now great, you're hitting all the top line numbers. Now what's happening on the bottom line, and how are we, improving that? And so I think from that perspective, it has been helpful. I don't want to call it that it has been unhelpful. It is also making us, all the hoteliers, think about driving our brand strategy, kind of our retainer strategy, and then just generally giving better experience, being a little bit more smart about our distribution and channel strategy, our direct booking. I mean, we got some great people like Justin joining our industry, so I think it has been overall, I think net a much better a situation that we're in now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely with the big groups that report public results as well. We've seen a large shift to direct and better, more profitable business, more people joining, loyalty and driving more value. Okay, I think we've got time for one last one. How do you guys feel about the Oh gosh, that's awful. I already feel bad. There are 4 men on this. There's not one woman. We'll be better next time. Sorry.
That's pretty bad. Yeah.
How do you guys feel about the strategy of overselling your lead-in room type? Is this a strategy you recommend, and when? Sorry, how do you feel about the strategy of overselling your lead-in room type? Would you do that?
So that is a strategy that I am very much against.
Right.
So the philosophy that I work with is that we're pricing, or we're doing something wrong to sell our upgraded room types earlier on. So if your booking curve for the cheapest room type is basically the only thing that is appealing to consumers in different points of booking window, then there's some pricing issue, distribution issue, some marketing issue. There's something that is not making your upgraded room type more appealing. And so figuring that out and then selling it at the same booking curve as your cheapest room type is more recommended.
So you actually track a sales curve for like upgraded rooms and for base room. You're kind of tracking.
So it kind of goes back to the attribute-based selling. So before we can talk about attribute-based selling, we should really actually try to figure out this room type thing first, because it's the first baby step towards attribute-based selling, right? So today we have a pricing for the cheapest room type, and then we kind of derive the pricing for other room types so that it's easier for us to manage the pricing of one thing. But instead of doing that, we should actually treat each one of those room types as its individual products, and they each have their own level of demand at different price levels, and the sales strategies should be different for each one of those room types. And it's not, you're not just trying to sell a bed in a room. That if you're, the way you sell a suite should be very much different from your regular room. And so yes, track the demand of each of your room types differently. Have rates or pricing strategy that isn't just a plus 20 pounds or $20 more than your base room type, and then try to figure out how you shift that at an optimal level.
Got it. Okay, so that's just another beautiful example to wrap up with of, again, like segmenting out your data and treating those two different room types as different things to be optimizing, rather than just trying to do it all together with a blunt instrument of a 20% upgrade. And on that, which is just a fabulous way to end. And so I want to say thank you guys so much for your time and for giving us a bit of a view of what's going on in your mind and in your offices and what you're thinking about how to drive better performance for hotels. It was great. And I think my last thing I have to finish with, I'm told by my marketing person who's going to kick me next door if I don't, is that if you want to learn more from hotel heroes, just like Justin, Joe, and Inder, then please do join us at the Direct Booking Summit in Paris, which is just a few weeks away, and should be both fun and informative and full of tips and thoughts from what other people in the market are doing. There's a discount which ends this Friday. I think then the discounts are done. So please do join us if you can. And one final thank you to the three of you for coming and sharing so openly and helpfully. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Charlie.